Okay, so we're starting our Nightingale planning. We'll go over some of the changes in a bit. So from a logistics standpoint, please mute your line. This call is being recorded. In terms of agenda, I wanted to discuss where we're at with the Magpie release. There's been some movement in terms of servers. I know test cells are offline, so let's figure out where things are at in terms of bug fixes and the rest of QA. And then we'll go over the new release schedule and cadence, the goals for this planning session, the release objectives, the schedule, and contributor slides. So Magpie release, where are we currently at? Right, I know Jordan was verifying an issue, but I think we're still waiting on the test cells for some of this.
So cells are up. I don't think they're available yet over the VPN. So I don't think that Jordan has access to them.
I tried again this morning and didn't have any luck.
Okay. STC is looking much better. I'm doing a 7-wide cluster. I'm on run 8 now. Jordan, I sent you a stack trace that I hit. That was a new one I hadn't seen before. So I'm much happier than I was, say, 2 days ago. I have not heard anything from QA. I don't know how they're doing one way or the other.
John,
so we still need until end of Friday because there are a couple bugs that we still need to verify, and it might take until end of Friday before we can say anything.
I know John was delayed due to the lack of the cells as well. Hopefully that's it.
Yeah, that's also another.
It seems that the bare metal servers are reached. I can reach them from the Wi-Fi in the office, but not from the VMs, the Proxmox VMs.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, we need to ask Luca about that then.
Yeah, I'll ask him.
Okay. And you probably can't get to those from home either, right?
Haven't tried that.
Yeah, I think that's going to have the same problem with the VPN access.
Okay.
So other than that, I think the only bug I was tracking was the thing that the session closing problem that looks to me like it's been fixed. I don't know if Jordan has more input on that, but I haven't seen it.
Well, because I haven't been able to access the cells, I'm just going off by your runs, but you should be doing the same thing that I was doing before. So it certainly seems like it's fixed, yeah.
Yeah. So my suggestion is there's 2 changes that are pending. One is the change I made yesterday that we talked about, Jordan, to the STC harness to put a delay in before the primitive started. That made things much more reliable for me. I want to check that in. I also I think I want to check in your atomics change. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
When you say delay, that always makes me a little nervous. That sounds like, asleep, trying to,
I think we need to file a bug for this also. So there's like a race condition in an STC test where we activated an application, but and waited for the application to say that it was active, but for some reason, still when commands are run after that, they're not available. So it's definitely seems like a bug that needs to be filed.
It's a bug in the test harness, though. It's not a bug in ONOS. So that's why I'm more willing to solve the problem with looking over it for now, because it was delayed testing.
All right. Yeah, sleeps are just one of my pet peeves.
Oh, I'm there with you, man. They're just brittle by nature. So Jordan, I think we should definitely put your the new atomics into master in 112. We can decide what we want to do with the change to the test harness, and then I think that should probably be a good base for QA to do whatever they need to do. You think that's a good approach?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, I'll do that right after the meeting then. Do we want to cut an RC, or is there sort of no reason to?
I will carry an RC after merging the ethnic exchanges.
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah.
Then after that, from a QA standpoint, how much more testing are you looking at?
So probably take about 2 days to run all of the tests, including the performance tests. And I want some time to try to verify that one of the topology bugs was kind of hard to reproduce, so I want to make sure that's fixed.
Is that the links issue?
No, that was the one you were looking at before.
RC, is that RC? That's the one where the device is. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, do we expect the atomics fix to be in today? So are we looking at a end of Friday release?
So the committing the change, will take me 15 minutes. Building the RC takes about an hour, so figure it'll be ready by lunchtime at the latest today.
And then I guess tentative release, depending on QA outcome.
Yeah, then it's in QA's court, right? Whether they're willing to sign off on it or not.
Okay. Okay. This is where we're currently at. So let's move on to the next thing, unless anyone else has anything else. Okay, so from a new release schedule cadence standpoint, ONOS is moving towards a 4-month release cadence. We're looking at changing it so that the next release is going to be in mid-April, followed by mid-August and a mid-December release. We're doing some of this to better align with core integration, as well as to be more efficient about planning. The code releases are moving to mid-February, mid-June, mid-October, with the intent being that the mid-June release would consume this mid-April release. So goals of what we're trying to do: we'll review the Magpie deliverables and community plans for Nightingale and the O releases. The Nightingale release being in April, the O release being in August. We want to make sure that folks know what other people are doing, make sure dependencies are understood, as well as what we're looking at in terms of integration as we head into sprint planning later this week. So what we wanted to do this time around was provide a set of release objectives, right? These will help drive kind of the priorities of the release as folks are working on things. And so with dynamic configuration, we're looking at a ONS demo in the March 2018 timeframe that would exhibit configuration via RESTconf, device synchronization, and support for transactions and rollback of a single device. With ISSU, we were looking at stabilizing the upgrade protocol that Jordan had presented a while back, as well as support for independent application upgrades. We're also looking into performance improvements. There have been some decrease in the performance numbers of a flow rules and intents due to recent changes to move it to a strongly consistent store. So we're looking at trying to improve those numbers. For P4, we're targeting a demo in the February 2018 timeframe at MWC to support VNF offloading of the M-Cord serving and packet gateway user plane functionality. We're also looking at GNMI support for course configuration, statistics, and notifications. David had recently brought up some concerns around being able to containerize ONOS, and so we're looking at some of those challenges and opportunistically in this release, as well as code bases aggregation, build, packaging. And with gRPC, what we're targeting is being able to deploy the Volta applications in containers. This way it allows us to scale them independently of ONOS, starting with the AAA app. So those are some of the objectives that we're targeting in this release. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Because as we go through the plans for features, this is what we're going to try to enable.
I guess maybe
so one question on the code base disaggregation build packaging release. I mean, that's I don't think it's well defined enough from an objective perspective.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
And I think Ray recently brought up some questions around that. So I think part of it is there something that we want to target in this release around this work?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to start chipping away at this. Unfortunately, it's kind of a
it's a never-ending problem.
It's just usually ends up being a spare time project, unfortunately, because we don't have the manpower and skills from community necessarily to help us with this. Yeah, I agree with Brian that it's not well defined, but we need to figure out some sort of perhaps even an intermediate objective and try to tackle it. For example, one thing that we spoke in the past of was to disaggregate the choice application and use that as a maybe kind of a guinea pig to validate the robustness of our release process to be able to deal with multiple different reports and stuff like that. Yeah, you're right. It needs to be better defined. Unfortunately, that's probably the first bucket that we go to remove resources for somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's beginning.
I guess my thinking is that like that line item, I think we should just, as it stands, it doesn't provide us any value, and it's only going to be one objective we just don't achieve. So I think if there's a specific item that you want to try to accomplish in there, then we call it out as a more specific objective and potentially put a target as to, you know, who needs it, why is it needed, kind of like the other things, right? Targeting a specific use case, targeting a specific thing, whatever, right? Or just say it's important to pay down the technical debt of the platform and improve usability of the platform, and we want to do one of these things.
I think that if we were going to target something, it would be around code base disaggregation to support Trellis being able to be independent of ONOS, right? Because a lot of what is driving the versioning for core today is really focused around the version or where Trellis is at.
I mean, I think that's a compelling story to say something to the effect of, we want to enable people to develop and version their applications independently from the core platform. And there's different ways that this could be done. It could be done by enabling multiple versions within the same repo. It could enable a multi-repo workspace. I don't know. I mean, that's a story we can start making progress towards. Agreed.
I think part of what we need to discuss as part of this release planning, though, is, right, as Thomas has alluded to, is do we have the ability to cover this? So do we remove this item altogether, or do we agree that it's a priority and somehow be able to cover it? Right? I think it's in kind of that limbo state of there's something we want, but it's not clear how we're actually going to make it happen. So we keep it on the list, but there's no real forward progress. So we either can consciously remove it.
That goes back to the point, if there's no progress, why is it on the list? Just to keep on our mind?
I completely agree. So do we want to go ahead and remove it? Or do we want to try to nudge it forward?
I'd strike it unless it becomes more specific.
Yeah, I would put it in the backlog, right? Just like when we are doing our sprint prioritization, if stuff we want to do it, but we don't have the resources and it's not high enough priority, you put it in the backlog, and then opportunistically you can pull it back in, and it's a stretch goal. If you accomplish it, and if you don't accomplish it, well, we'll get it next time.
How closely is this tied to the one above? The containerization.
Different.
It's somewhat orthogonal, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, if by containerized ONOS you mean run the ONOS environment and all of ONOS's applications within a single container, then it's orthogonal. If by containerized ONOS you want to run the ONOS core in one container and an ONOS app in another container over a high-performing gRPC interface, then the last three are more tightly coupled.
Yeah. See, that's what I would have called that second one out. When I see containerized ONOS, that's what I think about, that second part. If we're talking to run, how do I run existing ONOS in a container orchestration environment? That's different than containerizing ONOS.
So yeah, what you're thinking is predicated on the very last bullet and on the second to the last bullet. Right now, containerized ONOS is a much more modest goal, which is basically to be able to run ONOS, entire ONOS in a container without some of the issues that we're encountering right now. Bootstrap issues.
Well, yeah, I would, because ONOS is already containerized. It runs in a container.
Yeah.
What it doesn't do is run in a container orchestration environment. So I wouldn't call it containerized or ONOS.
Yeah, or you could say perhaps ONOS runtime disaggregation / containerization.
Yeah, but we're not going to be accomplishing that in this release, right? We're not aiming forward, David. Is in mind. I mean, we're not aiming. It's not an objective for this release at all.
Okay, so I'll go with what David has been calling the issue, and the point would be to address the challenges there to support Cord and Volta directly. I think for this last thing, that's fine if we want to say it's in the backlog, and we'll eventually get around to it. I think the important thing here is around the code base disaggregation. And then gRPC was really intended to decouple the application.
So are we, right, I mean, in the justification for gRPC, you talk about the ability to deploy Volta applications in containers. That implies code-based disaggregation. If we're not doing, if code-based disaggregation is going to the backlog, some level of that gRPC stuff is going to the backlog. Or at least we need to change the reason for doing it, unless we're going to consider this prep work for the next stage.
No, I mean, the process runtime disaggregation is a long pole task, which is predicated on some other things, and so we need to make sure we chip away at those other things, and gRPC is one of those. So we need to make. And so is code-based disaggregation, right? It doesn't make much sense.
So you could argue then the gRPC is that first step to code-based disaggregation.
It's one of those, yes. Code-based disaggregation is also part of that, right? Clearly, there's no point building the whole thing together and then running it separately. In EDA, you can do that, but I think you would want, if you're going to run things separately, you might as well have the freedom to build them and version them and roll them separately as well.
Agreed. Agreed.
Wait, so we're planning to also tackle moving apps out in ONOS in a container orchestration system?
So
to support this?
ONOS okay. So support Cord and Volta deployments. There were some challenges in running ONOS as it is. ONOS not disaggregated. Yes. ONOS exactly. As it is. There were some issues and some challenges, and that bullet that you just elaborated on was originally centered on the second bullet, the sub-bullet, which is support Cord.
And that was what we were prioritizing.
Right, and I think the expanded definition of that bullet right now is the first sub-bullet is not part of the objectives for this release.
Exactly. Because I think we can do exploratory on the second item. I don't think we're going to get to this item, but not this one.
So to get back to Brian's question, which was also my question, I'm perfectly fine with removing that item off of the list. With just a note that this is the pressure here is increasing and increasing, and something's going to pop eventually. So unfortunately, there's either more attractive tasks or more values tasks from business perspective, but our infrastructure, this is part of infrastructure, and that's beginning to build up pressure.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's where we have opinions, but no horsepower.
So let's move on to the next item. So here's the Nightingale schedule. Because of the extended timeline for this, we're looking at 6 sprints. The first sprint starting soon and then ending after the holidays. ONF is looking at a holiday shutdown from December 25th through the 29th, and we're starting back up, I believe, the 2nd of January. So this sprint is actually pretty large, but accounts for that shutdown.
Yeah.
The intent would be, would it aim for a release mid-April? Any questions before we move on to the rest of the brigades and their accomplishments?
That's fine. One thing I would like to know, to maybe insert just learning from this sprint, right, with the Magpie, I think I would make sure that with Nightingale we adhere to the feature freeze, and a little bit more than that, we start paying attention to the bug deficit, open-close ratios, even earlier than that, possibly sometimes during the sprint to start bug scrubs.
Yes, completely.
I think Magpie will probably be a 1 week late than where we were originally wanting to be, which is not bad. I don't want to make it bad, but I would prefer if he's,
I know, I agree we need to hold to feature freeze, right? I think we tried an experiment with this last release to be a bit more flexible, and I think there's been a lot of instability because of that. I think some of the other learnings I heard about was we should really look at doing bug scrubs more on a sprint level. So having the QA team help us in terms of identifying the must fixes on a per sprint basis, so that those get tackled along the way, so we're not pushing them all to the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I've noted a couple of the conferences that we had targeted. So late Feb, we're looking at MWC, and then late March, we're looking at ONS. And so those, the schedule to some extent will be impacted and driven by some of those dates. But of course, only for a subset of the team.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the various brigades and functionalities. So Jordan, do you want to start with core?
Yes. Yeah, so for the core, we made a lot of improvements to the distributed systems, especially Raft. A lot of things came up while we were doing ISSU, which really puts a lot of strain on the Raft implementation, moving data around the cluster. So we implemented a ton of bug fixes in there, improvements to the log compaction algorithm. And then there's been some discussion, some interest from the community in mastership election times. So we made some significant improvements to mastership election times using failure detectors. And then one of the long-term projects that we've been doing in the core in general is moving the primitives out of the core so they can be tested separately in atomics. And so that's been done in this release. And then finally, we implemented an offline backup restore mechanism, which essentially provides a way to take the data out of ONOS and store it somewhere else and restore it on any machine, and for that, for ONOS to restore from on this state.
Just one question on the last point, Jordan. Is there any documentation around it?
So we're working on it. We'll have it this week.
Okay, thanks, because I know some people that are very much interested in this feature, and it would be great to see them.
That's cool. That's good to hear. All right, for Nightingale, as Yen mentioned, one of the things that we're working on doing in the next release is improving the performance of the flow rule store. So we moved it to a consistent flow rule store and lost some performance. But part of the refactoring of primitives, part of the work refactoring primitives has been to build a much faster multi-primary replication protocol for primitives. And so that will be done in the next release, and we'll have essentially a faster option for primitives, which the new flow rule store will use. There's also been a lot of interest in more thorough primitive documentation, so that's going to be a big focus as we integrate all the new primitives back into ONOS. And then the other thing, like I said, there's been a lot of interest in the community in mastership, so we're continuously improving mastership, doing auto balancing of mastership. And then as one of the other goals was container orchestration, we're beginning in the next release to begin exploring all the issues that David has noted. And then hopefully in the O release, we'll, depending on what we get done with container orchestration this release, that may roll over into O, but there's not much else that's really slated for that. All right, for ISSU, I gave a talk to the TST a while back on the ISSU protocol. Essentially, this release, we essentially implemented the entire protocol, which included isolating state in primitives across 2 versions, doing rolling upgrades, lots of ISSU commands for managing the lifecycle of upgrades, failure detections during upgrades, support for rolling back upgrades, and support for managing applications through the upgrade process. And hopefully I'll be able to do a demo of that later today. And so for Nightingale, our focus for ISSU is really the protocol is a big complex thing, and so our focus is really on ensuring that it's really stable. So far it's looking better than we actually expected, but yeah, we'll just be focusing on getting it stable and working through the challenges of what we do when a developer refactors how state is stored in the cluster. And then as we're adding the multi-primary protocol for the flow rule store, we're going to implement some of the same portions of the upgrade protocol for multi-primary primitives into the flow rule store. And then we want to build tooling around managing the upgrades of individual applications and things like that. And then long-term is better ISSU tests. And then the future of ISSU is really hard to determine because it depends largely on how the code base is refactored and what challenges we have to overcome from refactoring. So it's difficult to predict what will happen in O, so we'll see.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. Any questions or comments from folks on this? If not, let's move to dynamic config. So I don't have an update on this. So Thomas or Utah?
I think this fell between the cracks, I guess. I was assuming Utah was going to do it, or Iowa, and I was busy yesterday. So, but I can certainly speak to this. The primary objective here is, as you alluded to, is to demonstrate a use case at ONS where we would have the ability to, through the RESTCon for the north and through this NetCon for the south, and via the newly introduced modules, which is the dynamic, the device synchronizer, and the dynamic config store itself, to be able to retrieve and update in an atomic fashion a configuration of the device.
So where are we with the device synchronizer?
I'm sorry, what was this?
So I think in Magpie there was some refactoring of the store, right? Or that was in plan?
Yes. So there was design work that was started during Magpie, yes. Both for the device synchronizer as well as the device synchronizer was driving some changes in the dynamic configuration store.
Can you hear me right now? So yes, the situation is just as Thomas described. So as a part of this device synchronization implementation, several deficiencies were found on the store side. So we are currently analyzing what was the problem in the store itself and redesigning the next design right now. And hopefully in the next release cycle, we'll be able to address the store design issue.
Okay, so that work is starting.
Yes.
We'll continue. And then device synchronizer design is done. What about development?
So equivalent of what we had before the device synchronizer can now be done using device synchronizer, but the putting the operational state from the device up to the application side, that side is missing, and in order to do that, we need to fix the store first. So that's the current state. So north to south is there, but south to north is not there.
Okay. Anything else? Especially with steering tools?
I'm not completely sure the detail, but at least there's some improvement to support more of the Yang 1.1 feature set, including any data, and implementing it into runtime is still in progress, but yeah, that is current state. Better support for more Yang feature set, that's, yeah.
Well, I think principal emphasis will be on the DCS and the device synchronizer.
Okay. And then I think what we're looking at, so from a demo standpoint, I think we want to make sure that there is a netconf northbound. Device synchronizer.
Netconf northbound?
Sorry, RESTconf.
Oh, okay.
And then transactions and rollback. Of one device. and then in O to extend that capability to multiple devices. Anything else I'm missing?
I don't think so.
Okay, I assume there'll be further enhancements to viewing tools. And then probably any performance improvements. I think we also had some additional refactoring of the store. Anything else?
I think as of now, that's it. We'll probably need to fix the things we'll find along the way.
Okay, sounds good. Oh, and sorry. So there's the demo and the app for ONS. We're just adding that in there to make sure we don't lose track of it. And then, thanks, Yuta. So P4?
Yes. So for the Magpie release timeframe, the P4 Brigade has been busy collaborating with Google and Barefoot on a demo we presented at Layer 1 to 3. It was in October. The demo we show ONOS able to control a Tofino-based leaf-spine fabric using P4 runtime, where the switches were programmed with Google store.p4. If you're interested, there's a video. There's a link to a YouTube video in the slides. Then we added support for a number of capabilities, such as support for P4 action profiles in groups, which is basically a data plane capabilities that enables things like ECMP-like rewarding. And this can be programmed today using the ONOS group API, so the same API for both OpenFlow devices or P4 devices. We added support for mastership arbitration of P4 runtime devices. We modified the P4 runtime driver to support ONOS, multiple instances of ONOS, and that's because the P4 runtime driver needs to maintain some state. So we made that state distributed. We added support for Barefoot Tofino, so we now have a device driver for Barefoot Tofino, which extends the P4 runtime-based driver. And we also did some refactoring of the PI framework. This was based on the experience and learnings of the past months. And these are the Magpie accomplishments. So for the next release, we're working on fabric.p4, where the goal here is to enable a P4-based core fabric that supports the existing Trellis applications like segment routing, BTN, and all the applications that are using Trellis. We just want to swap the silicon. We want to use P4 silicon in that case. We're working on VNF offloading use case for MWC. In this case, we're working to provide an implementation of the service packet gateway data plane in P4. So instead of running on a VNF, that processing functions will run in the data plane, in the fabric data plane. We're working to add support for GNMI and OpenConfig to do things like core configuration and status. And we also plan to add initial support for INT, in-band network telemetry. So we're planning to add support for ONOS service to orchestrate the generation and collection of telemetry data, clearly given that the switch supports INT. In that case, we also provide a sample P4 program. These are the Nightingale deliverables. For the O release, we're looking at providing P4 and time enhancement. And this is really in sync with the P4 API working group. So P4 and time, there is no standard official specification yet. It's changing every week. So this is a way for us to say that we plan to keep at the ONOS support for P4 and time in sync with the specification F4. We plan to work on more VNF offloading, both for the M-port use case, for example, floating other VNFs there, or we are also thinking about focusing on other core use cases, like, for example, our core. There are a number of VNFs that could be offloaded there. We're also looking at providing more GUI enhancements, and also planning to provide capabilities for ONOS to implement dynamic program loading. So this is concerned the capability of ONOS of swapping the P4 program onto the device after the device has been discovered by ONOS and it's been forwarding traffic. And that's all.
Okay, thanks, Carmelo. gRPC?
Yes, I would like to give updates on gRPC Brigade. So the goal of gRPC Brigade is to provide gRPC northbound support for ONOS. And the accomplishment which we done for Magpie release is like we added a bunch of like gRPC northbound service support, like link service and the host service, meter and the component config service, region and the application. And also we improved a lot on this unit test coverage for each service. And also we added the support for gRPC service registration with the static binding mechanism. This is the accomplishment we have done for Magpie. Could you go to the next slide? Okay, so the proposed features for Nightingale deliverable would be we would like to add more like northbound support for the services that are dependent on the AAA application. So for example, like we realize that this AAA application relies on the package service and the group service and the flow objective, flow rule, and intents, and those type of services. So definitely some of the service already been work in progress. So I think we can add support for those services as well. And also we added the support for mastership and some other like network configuration service and so on. So once we've done all of these services, and then we can start working on the initial support for off-platform AAA application through the gRPC northbound API. So the old deliverable, we plan to add more like support for the northbound, like we would like to add support like metric service and the statistics and so on. So this part can be maybe changed later on due to the depending on what kind of all-platform application that we would like to put it into the ONOS. So so that's it. And we also hope that the community can help us to do more like a performance assessment, to do some like performance-wide comparison with this REST API and gRPC and so on. So that's it.
Okay, and Jen, I think maybe in O we can start looking at other Volta applications.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So those can help drive the services that we would need to put in place.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to GUI Brigade. I don't think I see Stephen. So I guess a quick question I have is, has there been participation from GUI?
I personally know that Stephen is getting married. So that's why there is a problem in participation. I mean, there's like a little bit of a blank on that side. So just an update on that. Nothing.
Okay, So I think we'll have to work with him and see what his plans are for this next release then. And then Lion, the localization work. Any updates there?
I am in the channel, and I can say that there has been some new languages added. I don't remember actually which ones. I know Elisa is driving it, and there have been a few new languages. That's about all I know.
I think that's just an opportunistic work that primarily just based on the motivations of the individual volunteers. What we're lacking in this area is somebody with technical skills to internationalize the rest of the views. We have about maybe like 10 more views or so that need slightly refactored to support localization, and otherwise I think
yeah, there is a good guide to do so, to learn about how to put in the code in the views. But I think we're lacking technical people's time, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what we're lacking. We have people that know how to do this, they just don't have time, they have other priorities.
Okay, so maybe we can get Elisa to update this. But I think what I noted here was we're looking for community help to internationalize more of Sonos views.
Yes.
And the Network Virtualization Brigade, Claudine is on PTO, so will not be able to join. There were some additional work around the virtualization core, around distributed virtual flow rule. With OF Agent, they've made progress to add more support for port mod, flow mod, group mod, meter mod, and log filtering per OF Agent tenant. They've started some work on external connectivity, and code is under review, but I think there is still some work pending there, and then STC tests for virtual networks added. In the upcoming Nightingale release, they're looking at additional work to OF Agent to allow tenants who use external SDN controllers through OpenFlow, support asynchronous messaging, role management, log filtering per virtual network, and then complete the external connectivity feature. They're looking at OpenStack integration, add support for snapshotting and embedding, support additional southbound, and virtual network resilience. I don't have an update from the teaching brigade.
I can share some stuff that I know. There's been a successful tutorial in a southeast country, Asian country, where one of our ambassadors from Korea went and did a successful tutorial at the university. I know that also some material was produced by Lefteris because he has run a course on SDN in his university, but I don't know the state of it. I think there is some work on having that to be shared. Work started also on dividing, cutting, and reviewing the ONOS build videos that were shared as a big bulk on YouTube. That's about it. I don't know more than that. Sorry.
Okay. So they participated in the ONOS build tutorials, and so that I think was really helpful. So it sounds like there are additional tutorials that are being presented in various places. Then the videos are being processed so that they're being more easily consumed?
That's the idea.
Okay.
So like last year we did that ONOS build, we cut the videos and spread them across like multiple videos and per session. So one video per half an hour, basically, per session. That's the same idea we want to do here.
Okay, sorry, tutorials. And then, do we know what the plans are? For this next release?
Oh, no, sorry, I personally don't know.
Okay, so we'll need an update from Abdulhalim. Security and performance?
I know that the report has been published, so that's one thing that I know. And another thing is that I know that they're working on a second report proposal, which encompasses a different set of tests, some performance comparison with ODL, and some netconf southbound functionality and performance testing. That's about all I know. Or very briefly what I know. More details can be acquired through Stefano.
Okay, I think I missed one thing you had said. We'll need an update from Stefano. And then QA?
Okay. So for QA, for Magpie accomplishments, we had a couple new tests or improvements. Most of the new tests were in the graphs area. Basically, there was a lot of refactoring done in the graphs, and there were some changes in the new graphs, the way we were displaying numbers on the graphs, and we also made some customizable graphs. We could generate customizable graphs based on like test suite, branches, builds, etc. And also like adding values to the bars on the wiki test results graphs. So many changes went into graphs. And another new thing was like we implemented draft log checks in couple tests. And some of the test on code style checks, and we also fixed some of the coding style issues in the test on areas. And there were one more new test in the for the ONOS form cluster command, where we are testing for basic things like whether all nodes come up or all nodes have the same cluster configuration, and then some basic functionality of the clusters in that test. And we also have some ISSU tests which are still in progress. We plan to continue them. And in terms of error investigations and fixes in tests, there were many investigations and many debugs that we did in the areas, some of the tests where we had issues with. There were many tests were in the range of like functional. We had some Docker tests, HA and performance, and also some Delta tests. And in some of these tests, we also fixed the errors in the tests, and then they have been corrected. And in terms of Jenkins jobs, we streamlined some of the pipeline jobs for the QA. And and also another change that was added in the Jenkins job was if there was any failure, we report them to the Slack channels, mostly in the QA Slack channels. And in terms of documentation, we created in the Magpie release, we created a new white paper, which is the technical version of performance measurements. That's again was the Kingfisher, and And there were several updates in the wiki pages as well, and documents for whenever there is a new person hired in QA, those kind of changes have been taken place. So that's all for Magpie. So for Nightingale deliverables, I think going forward from January, there will not be any new interns coming up for the next 6 months due to budget issues. And we will be having only like at most one person working on ONOS, or maybe 1.5 engineers working on ONOS. So with that in mind, for the Nightingale deliverables, we will be having some ISSU testing and some power failure for HA testing. And for the O, we will be continuing the ISSU tests. And probably we will be adding some P4 tests in O. And we will focus mostly on the performance test and measurements in the new flow rules tool.
Okay, thanks, Sajitra.
That's all for QA.
Okay. And then we'll move on to Packet Optical. I don't see an update from Mark. Is Mark there?
Mark's not here now.
I'm not pretty sure I can enumerate everything on top of our head, but basically this most of the work was done by external collaborators, and so we have enhancement to a few of their devices, and mostly computed from Equinix and Polaris and Uplink, which added support for power configuration API on more devices. Initially, there was only Uplink. Now I think we have support for Polaris devices, and also Polaris also contributed a driver which will enable external application to read the power reading so that they can do some form of power rebalancing application of the platform. Another thing I think was an update to Sienna driver, that Sienna transponder can be programmed using, I think, REST and Netcon. I need to double check, but that was contributed from Equinix. I think that's what I can remember off the top of my head right now. Yeah. I'll update the slide if I find the URL later.
Okay. Thanks, Yuta. Any plans for the upcoming release?
So this program will become part of the Open and Distributed Transport Network project, which is going to kick off January. So what actually going to happen, we'll need to wait for the January timeframe to figure out what's going to happen. So I guess we can just, yes, we'll defer planning to January-ish, yes.
Okay. I don't believe OpenStack this effort has been happening. I haven't seen any work on security mode ONOS either. So I can remove those slides for the afternoon. And then we're looking at the Nightingale Sprint 1 starting tomorrow. Thomas, I believe you'll be hosting that. And then things that we're noting in terms of learnings that we want to fold into the next release is there were some stability issues, right, due to some lingering defects that were not addressed until the hardening sprint. And so what we're looking at moving forward to do is we'll do a bug scrub per sprint. Part of this is we would like the QA team to identify the must fixes for each sprint. And then this way, this will help drive making sure that the platform going forward is stable from sprint to sprint. And we don't wait till the end to try to address issues. Does this work?
Yep.
Okay, so demo. I will stop sharing. Carmelo has a demo that he'll present for the P4 ECMP functionality. Jordan is looking at a possible PM demo if the test cells are available then.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, let me.
Okay, so I guess you can see my screen. What I have here is a leaf spine topology made of BMB2 software switches, programmed with a program called basic.p4, which is part of the ONOS repository. It's a very simple program. P4 program offers layer 2 forwarding capabilities and ECMP. In this case, I'm generating traffic from host 1 to host 2. And as you can see, the traffic is being forwarded using ECMP. So this is similar to other demos related to P4 we showed in the past. The main difference in this demo is that, as you can see, this network is controlled by 3 instances of ONOS, so it's a 3-node cluster. And this is to demonstrate for mastership handling and also the P4 support for ONOS multi-instance. And the other main difference is that ECMP in this case is enabled using, is provided using action profiles and the ONOS group API. So differently from previous demos in which be using, let's say directly the drivers and more, customized functionality of the switch. In this case, if we look at the, so this is the flows installed in one of the devices. If we look at the groups, we can see that we have one group, this device, with 2 members. In this case, the 2 members, or using OpenFlow terminology, 2 packets are used to forward the packets in the 2 different ports. So yes, with this demo, what I want to demonstrate is how today we're able to control a network of BMB2 devices using multiple instances of ONOS, and now we're able to support groups, so P4 action profiles and groups using the ONOS group API. Is there any question?
Nope, no question. Okay, thanks, Carmelo.
You're welcome.
Okay. So if there are no additional questions or comments, I think we're done with this release planning session. There will be an afternoon session that'll start at 4 this afternoon. So it would be great if folks can participate in that. This way, other geographies can be aware of what we're planning for this upcoming release. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.